Where did the events of the Book of Mormon take place? Everybody wants to talk about that. I love it. It's one of the things that I fell in love with when I was like 11 years old. I was reading the Book of Mormon and talked to my social studies teacher and went, holy cow, the stuff I'm learning here, it correlates with what I learned in the Book of Mormon. And I was fascinated by it. I thought it was a really cool discovery. I share it with my social studies teacher, and he says Brigham Young made that whole thing up. It's all a bunch of trash, and it's all just a cult and blah blah blah. I'm like, okay, first off, buddy, you're not that good of a social studies teacher if you thought Brigham Young made it. Second off, I shared it with my family, and then they just go and show me the introduction, and it says that it was from the inhabitants of the I think at the time it said Native Americans. I think it's just the Americas. And so I kind of felt stupid because I never listened. I kind of just had to learn on my own. But we do know we came from Israel and came down this way, probably to Amman. I've heard places up here be proposed for Bountiful and down here. Now, I've looked at a lot of the history down here, and the stick of Joseph is doing a great job, actually, going through a lot of this stuff, too. A lot of the stuff has been gone through by other scholars. But ultimately, I'm not gonna go through all the different evidences and stuff, because we've seen that 1,000 times from 1,000 different people. What I will say is that the lands out here, what we know historically and archaeologically, is that there are many sunken cities all through here, even all the way up into here. Even Tennessee has what some believe to be an Egyptian temple that had sunk. Well, ultimately, the events of the Book of Mormon, I think, primarily took place, let's see, I'd say from around here on further up and all across. One reason I mention that is because it mentions Columbus. It doesn't mention Vikings much, earlier coming by, which they did. And there's a lot of speculation of other groups that have come through, even Egyptians, Chinese. The Olmec language has this Chinese written structure to it. A very Asiatic structure, but yeah. So the thing is what we have kind of commonly called the Anthon script, the piece of paper with all the writing on it, that's really not the Anthon script. That's not what Charles Anthon had looked at. That was a writing left over from one of the scribes, and it's kind of traditionally been passed through. The Anthon script did have a circular Meso-American, probably Meso-American calendar system on it, and it was written in a pillar structure or columns. However, there is one person who has gone through and studied, and I'll put it in the description, who believes that that piece of writing that we do have, that we traditionally call the Anthon script, he believes that he has translated it. And what it is a foreword of the Book of Mosiah. And it offers a lot more detail, a lot more dates, and a lot more information than what we do have in the at the front of that book. And so there's some thought and speculation that it would have been included in the records of Lehi, but instead we went with the records of Nephi, which is smaller. Anyways, I know that all through here, underneath that, and if you look on Google Maps, it's all mud pits and everything. It's deep, 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 large amounts of salt. The flooding out here, the mud, all this stuff is just horrendous. But it looks like all these lands may have also been connected, especially with the sunken cities on these coasts. And that this is where even Columbus comes and lands, and he's mentioned in First Nephi. There's some relevance that it would include that typical portion of area. Why would it mention that? Why would it mention that if he didn't land in that general vicinity? So outside of that, the record of the Book of Mormon is like a small strand of people and events. But we're going to see the cultural context will seep into all North and South. It'll go all over with their trade partners and everything. We even know that like Samuel the Lamanite comes up and preaches, so we know that there are different lands who were being led by God that did not have the record. So to say that this was the one and only, I mean, the thing is there were people being led by God all over. And we get so myopic to go, oh, just because of the Book of Mormon, that's the only sliver we have. But no, there's remnants scattered Israel. There's people all throughout the lands, generally cut off. Samuel the Lamanite had to come up and speak. And look at their governmental structure. Here, kings. Kings, 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 kings. Up here, chiefs, judges. Our form of government is fashioned after what we have from the Native Americans. In fact, the Algonquin, close to Ojibwe, written language, that in the Micmac, is what we end up seeing in that traditional Anthon script writing too. Has very many Hebrew and Egyptian looking characters, because what we have is the language of the Hebrews written, the phonetics as well, the phonetics written in the Egyptian language. Now the person who believes he's translated the Anthon script, and I'll put in the written text in the description below, but he says that it takes in elements of Egyptian, was it Mesopotamian, which would have come from the Jaredites, but also Mayan with their numerical structure and their date setting. It's a way to encrypt more information into a smaller area. And Phoenician style. So it's all these basically kept in one, and it resembles the Ojibwe language. Ojibwe are up here. But nearly all the Native American tales talk about coming from an ocean or coming from turtles. But we're gonna see that same culture, same pattern. You probably even see similar names, and everything is happening secularly, like a cycle. So we're going to see patterns of these things. Even if you look at like 600, 800 AD, you'll see patterns of the Book of Mormon events happening still among these people. It won't match up exactly, but it'll rhyme, and it's because it is a pattern. It's a type of these things, and we're all building up, to this great time. So were there prophets up here? Yes. Were there prophets down here? I believe so. Were the prophets down here? Maybe. But certainly it was here. Certainly it was here. And we do have people there, and they do have trade with each other. Even the Native Americans in the early colonial in our early colonies, they traded east, west, north, south they traveled this entire region, and the ones, they primarily would keep to certain areas, but they, like even Chief Pocatello would go with the Blackfoot and with different tribes from time to time. So very unique. And I got some corn coming in. The grasshoppers keep eating my green beans down to the stem, but I tried to do the Three Sisters, the beans, the corn, but instead of squash, it's watermelon, or sorry, melon. And pumpkins are starting to turn out. And over here, some good corn. Got a good pumpkin, some watermelons, and more of that corn. So this is also where I tried to do the Three Sisters, but I forgot to put in the beans. Ultimately, the events of the Book of Mormon, it doesn't really matter because there's people being led everywhere. And if we had a full record of everything, man, it would probably make it a lot easier. But we do know that a remnant of the Lord's people has been spread all through North, South, and Central. The records ended up in the North. All the things, like who primarily had kings and who primarily had chiefs and judges? Nephites. Nephites were more north. Lamanites were more south. Samuel the Lamanite, we're told to keep a lot of his writings. We don't have that. Even Jesus, when he visited again, Samuel the Lamanite, where's his writings? Well, I'm sure if we had that, that would explain Central and South America. But ultimately, it ended in North America. And they did have a writing style that allowed for them to go ahead and encrypt a lot of information to a small amount of space, which explains the plates. To me, I feel like there's good explanation. I don't pinpoint cities and areas like other people do, but just knowing this is a blessed land. Look at South America being ran by cartels. Then you have Peru, aliens being magicians, crazy demon stuff happening all through South America. How many returned missionaries have you met that said, oh yeah, there's devilish stuff going on there? Well, the promise that is given about in the Book of Mormon, I mean, is it going to Canada, which didn't even fight for its independence, just waited, got it, and then lost it? I mean, they had it for a very short period of time. We've had it, and we've also gone to be a protector throughout all the world. It sounds like this land was designated in the Book of Mormon. I do think that it came out west pretty far, but that's not all recorded in the Book of Mormon. But there's intermixing and tribal encounters. There's many cities mentioned that we only hear about when they're destroyed. So we know that there's trade all through Mexico, New Mexico, Texas, all the way up to Utah, Idaho, all the way over to the Great Lakes. So if Native Americans were making that travel and had migrated in this form of direction, then I think it's safe to say that it happened all over. But the events are wherever the record is. And it goes as simple as that. You don't, I mean, there are more records. We have accounts of more records. Have you seen the property that the church owns all throughout New York and all these different areas that nothing's built on? And it's just kept? We're keeping record. We're record-keeping people. So we go where the records are. There's lots of stuff down in South America, Mexico, which were all burned up. And I think there was lots of good things that were probably as credible as the Apocrypha, if we had an understanding. But again, it's perpetuated through fallen people who have apostatized and have perpetuated a culture. So traditions and culture stays behind, but the truth and the meaning and the purpose, that gets lost with the authority. So that's where I stand on that, and hope you enjoyed that. And look at that. Do you see those apples? How do you like them apples?